Well, thank you for staying with us as we get into the news review this morning. We're joined by founder and leader of the National Interest Movement, Dr. Abu Sakara Foster. A very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Great. Before we get into the papers, quite a number of items to digest, but I want your quick take on some interesting matters germane to our national life. We're talking about the latest Afrobarometer report, for example, which shows that, guess what? The executive branch is in the top two. I mean, the Ghana Police Service and the executive. The office of the president in second. So first two slots from the executive. Then you have the legislative, body in third position. And guess what? The judiciary is in fourth position. Basically, all three arms of government occupy the first to fourth positions. I would like your quick reflection on that, and as well as your take when the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, says they are going to get us the best of deals from the IMF, echoing or re-echoing what President Akufo-Addo has been saying. Your quick thoughts on these two matters.
I think the first thing is the commonality between the Article 71 holders in two of those categories, the presidency and the judiciary. And we have long argued that one of the key things that we need to do is to review the terms of those Article 71 holders, and also as a means of cutting down some of the waste and bringing into proportion their treatment in respect to other wages. That's just the first key point. The second point, of course, is with respect to the executive. The fact that for many years now, the overspending within the presidency has not been properly accounted for. And there's been previous requests and current requests that the accounting for expenditure within the presidency be more transparent. Of course, people argue that, these are close to state secrets and so on, and we cannot disclose everything about it. But I think there's a very small proportion of that are related to state secrets. The rest of it is generally the excessive travel, which we all know about. And this is one of the key things that I think we need to, put a rein on if we are going to reduce
Did you say excess travel? Because in recent times, we've been told that 30% of executive salaries have been slashed, that 50% of fuel, disbursement to some, members of the executive has also been slashed, and that, in fact, there's been some sort of freeze on travel, apart from very relevant travel. You're aware of that?
You're saying that is a statement in recent times, but then the fact of the matter, and as we all know, is that it has been going on for quite a long time. And not only that, when it does happen, the number of people who accompany the executive is also something to be alarmed about. So if we really want to focus on reducing expenditure, these are areas that we can reduce expenditure by more transparency. And perhaps then you wouldn't have these questions about, its rating on the Afrobarometer Index. Now, the other thing, of course, is gift giving. As you well know, in our political system, there's quite a lot of gift giving from the presidency. Where does all this money come from, and how is it accounted for? So you have to go into the details. If you want to see where you can make savings, you have to go into the details. If you have to go into the details, there has to be greater accountability and transparency. So I think that's the main thing that should be said. How the judiciary comes into it, I don't know, but probably from the same amount of travel side, because it is typical in public officialdom for travel to take up a significant percentage of the budgets. And the question is, we keep going on all these, study tours to do better, experience building, fine, some of it. But really, the amount of it it's a bit on the excessive side. If we talk about capacity building, surely our capacity should have been built by now.
And just to top up, in my interaction yesterday with another person who joined me on the show, mention was made of how, for example, a lot of these state vehicles, V8s, most of them, They go for a function and they are left running for as long as the program will last. 2 hours, 3 hours, they are running. Some say, oh, it's a security measure so that if anything, whichever officer or CEO or minister can just jump in and get away. But in the meantime, that means that if that minister attends 3 programs and each program lasts 9 hours, it means apart from the time on the road, the engines are also going to be on for 9 hours. I don't know whether that makes any sense to you.
Well, I think, you see, there's some of these things which we should stop doing and stop giving excuses for doing them. This is a common thing that you see at functions. Basically, the drivers are enjoying the air conditioning. I mean, that's the basic thing of it. And, the other thing I would like to say is that if indeed it is a security measure, how do the misty windows where the driver can't even see outside help? And in any case, how many times have we had occasion for these public officials to have to resort to such security measures in the country? So I think some of these, and in any case, even if it were, can you afford it? And that's a key question about government. There's certain things that you can't afford. You don't have to copy everything that other people do. They do that because they can afford it. You can't afford it. You got a good V8. Most V8s will start the first time that you start them. So I don't buy that at all.
And it's an interesting phenomenon. Right before we get into the daily graphic, I start from there. I just want your final take on this matter. So the president has reiterated his commitment to putting up a national cathedral. He says, guess what? There'll be no good time to put up a national cathedral. And so he is going to go ahead with this. Of course, he told us after getting elected that this was a promise he had made to God. In the interim, looking at how much we're spending on this and looking at the other dynamics, we're going to the IMF and all of that, what is your reaction? Especially as there's also the possibility of this becoming an uncompleted project, which then, if there is a change in tenure, could become another white elephant, abandoned project. I mean, these are all realistic dynamics. What's your take?
Well, the first thing is that, based on principle, I have never really supported that project because you must separate temporal from, sectoral matters and be clear about it. A cathedral is a temporal issue. Those who are involved in it and who are proactive in it, should take the initiative to do that. And we have several churches all over this country. And I don't really see the need for another one. I believe that the sectoral issues we should be concerned about should be focusing on building, industries to create jobs. That's our primary concern. You go see the number of churches in Accra. If all those churches were, industries, there'll be so much more employment. But of course, people have a right to set up their church and do whatever they want to do. It's the freedom of worship. But really and honestly speaking, if you just take a very objective view and you go around the country, where even there's no primary school for kids to go to in a village, there will be a church, a proper church building. Now, of course, people have their priorities. But my point here is that if you don't invest in industry with as equal passion as you invest in places of religious worship, then don't expect to see jobs.
Right. On that note, let's get into the papers now and take a look at what the Daily Graphic is telling us this morning. SSNIT removes 21,000 ghost pensioners. Exercise saves nation 312.27 million Ghana cedis. That's the story, the banner headline, basically, as far as the Daily Graphic is concerned. Just let's get a bit into that. The Social Security and National Insurance Trust has saved the country 312.27 million Ghana cedis as a result of the deactivation of 21,337 pensioners from its database. The savings follow the inability of unscrupulous people to renew the life certificates necessary for the collection of pensions from April 2018 to June this year. The affected pensioners, who have been presumed not to be alive, failed to go to SSNIT offices across the country to renew their pension certificates within the 5-year period, thereby preventing the National Pension Fund from paying any pensions to them. The Director General also talks about tracking pensioners and debt recovery. In terms of the non-recovery of the 2.8 billion Ghana cedi loans SSNIT granted various companies between 2009 and 2016, Dr. Ofori Tenkran said the trust had developed a new investment policy document to guide such transactions in the future. Let me also just add that the Director General made mention of the fact that while they've taken off these names, if it so happens that for somebody, maybe the person is unable physically because of age or whatever to confirm their certificates, which is why they've been struck out, they can find someone else to, do it for them, just so the right things are done. What is your reflection on this story, especially considering that a lot of people are still complaining about the pittance they get as pension?
Well, I think the first point is that you have to have a systematic way of doing this that is live. And to do that, we must think of a way of linking that to the national database on the national identity card so that it's kept live, and also you can link that to the issue of death certificates. There are too many things that the documents that are used for various exercises that are kept in disparate places. So a serious attempt to consolidate all this information in one place so that automatically you can pull out from the death certificates issued people who have actually died. And I think that will be very, very important for efficient operation of this, and to make sure that you do not remove somebody who is still alive. Because in the first place, as you say, there's not much to it anyway, because the value of the money they're getting has depreciated over time due to, currency depreciation, high cost of living, and all these other things that we all know about. So what they're getting is a pittance, particularly when you compare that to what Article 71 holders get. So this, again, is one of the disproportionality in the remuneration of people who are going on pension. Somebody who has worked as a teacher or a police officer is, struggling for some, 18,000, 30,000 Ghana cedis distributed over a year. And then, other people are taking home 600,000, every 4 years. So those are the disparities. And when you compare that some of these people are people who have actually lived and served in rural areas, and it affects rural areas more than those people in urban areas, then you have to be willing to err on the side of, making sure that people do not get taken off, accidentally, and ensure that at least they continue to get that until you can verify all these details. Don't just remove them and then wait to verify it.
Let's also get into another matter that today we'll be contemplating with our members of Parliament who will join us in the studio. Parliament to decide Adwoa Safo's fate today. That story is on page 20 of the Daily Graphic newspaper. And Parliament will today decide at plenary, that is the full House of Parliament, whether or not the seat of the New Patriotic Party Member of Parliament for Dome Kwabenya should be declared vacant automatically for absenting herself from the House for more than 15 sitting days without permission from the Speaker. For what we gather, the longest has been 28 sittings. That was after the Privileges Committee of Parliament had, by a majority decision, recommended that Sarah Adwoa Safo's seat be declared vacant automatically. In the view of the committee, Ms. Safo failed to take advantage of the numerous opportunities and facilities offered her to provide reasonable explanations with regard to her absence without leave. And so, quote, therefore, pursuant to Article 97(1)(c) of the 1992 Constitution and the Court of Appeal decision in the case of Professor Stephen Kweku versus the Attorney General and 3 others, the Dome Kwabenya seat is automatically vacant by operation of law. The majority is pushing for this, and the 31-member Privileges Committee, chaired by the First Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Joseph Osei-Wusu, submitted the report to the House this Monday. And per the committee's report, the members of the committee concluded that Mr. Ejapong and Mr. Quartey, that is Mr. Henry Quartey and Mr. Kennedy Ohene Ejapong, admitted having absented themselves for more than the 15 sitting thresholds. However, it said the explanations given by the two MPs for being absent were found reasonable. Just a quick point to add. For these two male MPs, and I'm intentionally using male here, male MPs, the minority, did not participate in voting on the matter. They said that they were not convinced by the explanations of health reasons given by the two, but it was left with the majority side in Parliament, and they voted in that respect. But when it comes to Sarah Adwoa-Safo, they are saying she simply didn't avail herself to the opportunities available, and so they are declaring her seat vacant. Quick thoughts?
Well, on the gender side of it, I think you have to see the medical evidence in respect to both gender groups to know whether those evidences were valid or not. I know in one case, if you have to bring people in ambulances to vote in Parliament, it's clear that there is a definite medical issue there. As to the conditions of the other two, we're not sure. What I think is important in this matter is that we are looking at Parliament to see whether it will act independently and enforcing its own rules to assert the fact that it is actually separate from the executive. And whatever the executive may or may not want, it is able to enact its own rules. I think that is the critical issue at stake here. And everybody is watching to see whether it will do that and whether it will also do that fairly in all cases. So it's important that people get this right, because this comes at a critical time when, in the case of the national interest movement, we've argued for a clear separation of powers and also greater independence of Parliament to ensure that it is able to do its job independently. So we are watching to see whether this happens or not, and I think it is very important for the members of Parliament to ensure that the right thing is done as a demonstration that even in this weakened state, the Parliament is able to act in some matters quite independently from the executive.
All right, two quick stories to wrap in the Daily Graphic. The first one, I'll just take a swipe at it. The latest survey by the Ghana Integrity Public Services survey report reveals that people with higher education pay more bribes. Those who are better educated pay more bribes. But another issue I wanted to react to, e-levy yields 93.7 million Ghana cedis in 2 months. That's on page 16 of the Daily Graphic. And the government mobilized 93.7 million revenue from the e-levy in the first 2 months of implementation. The amount mobilized in May and June this year was about 93.59% lower than the 1.46 billion Ghana cedi target set in this year's budget. So now the figure has been, the projection has been reviewed from 6.96 billion to 611 million. I mean, we're basically losing what? 6.3 billion. We are shaving off 6.3 billion, and we're going to accrue only 611 million. How would you describe the e-levy on the back of this?
Well, I think two things. The first is that the figures given were projections.
Right.
And there were projections that were not based on any long-term plan of government. But
you mean proper planning? You mean proper planning didn't go into the projections? Because as with our revenue, our GDP, we project and hope to get there.
Yes. So what I'm saying basically is that because these things are very short term, I wanted to make reference to the need for a long-term national development plan in segments. And then those segments will allow you clear mileposts within which you can make proper budgeting and projections. But if within every sector we are reacting to situations and making projections that have no reference to at least a medium-term expenditure framework and plan, then you're going to get those things off base quite significantly. because you don't have other things as point of reference to check to see how it is going. For you to see, okay, within an error of this or that, I should be within this range. So when you make those kind of instantaneous projections based on what you hope to get and the need you have, in other words, it is the pressure of getting money that has forced us to do this, and therefore we need to get this much money. So let's assume that we will get this much money. Let's do this. So there's a disconnect there. You need to proceed based on a trend of what has been happening over a while to be able to make a good prediction. So be that as it may, let's put that aside. Yes, the shortfall is there. And also because maybe within that, people have found various ways of avoiding that payment. First of all, people feel that it is double and triple taxation. So they might as well, and their taxes are already going up, cost of living is already going up. So they're going to look for ways of saving on their money. And if it's a transfer they need to do, maybe they'll find other ways of doing it, which doesn't involve losing part of that money. Because now, in this high cost of living, every single CD counts. And, people have got to that level where they are actually counting every single CD. So any way of saving money, in as much as, yes, we need to raise revenue, but if we can save that money by taking other measures, then people will do that. So I'm not entirely surprised that the estimations are not in line with what people thought they were going to get.
I'll look at 4 quick stories, and we have just about some 3 minutes to address them. But let me start with the Ghanaian Times newspaper, and I'm going straight to the point. The first story on page 6, ex-leader Rajapaksa to return to Sri Lanka. You know about Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the Sri Lankan president, and how he was basically hounded out of his own country. Looking at the situation in that country, what would you say the lessons are for leaders, African leaders, and especially maybe to focus Ghanaian leaders on the back of what happened there? Sri Lanka still doesn't have an IMF program. It's still in dire economic straits. And then the second bit I want you to reflect on page 7 of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Government not reinstating road tolls across the country. That's according to the Ministry of Roads and Highways. But of course, we know that they say new roads to be constructed with the PPP agreement or arrangement will be tolled, including the motorway, the Tema motorway extension. Your quick reflection on these 2 stories.
Well, I think, first of all, the fact that he's returning suggests that they want to carry on with their democracy in one shape or form.
He has resigned, so...
Yes, but of course, it's good for him to be in the country. It means rule of law is going to pertain. And there's not going to be a kangaroo court or anything like that. But that he'll be, whatever things he's accused of, he'll be tried fairly. But those are side issues. The main substantive issue that led to this, which African countries need to learn from, is that the cost of government is too big for our level of income. And that again goes back to conditions of service we serve, the accoutrements that go with running government, the paraphernalia that goes with it, and then also, the use of public positions in order to accrue and get wealth for individuals. So those are the things that have led to this. And I think other people need to sit up and learn that you can't keep scooping from the barrel forever and ever. One day you will get to the bottom of the barrel.
Right.
And when you get to the bottom of the barrel, you will get a strong social reaction, because what is happening then will be clear to everybody. So we need to sit back and say, look, here's a case in point where they got to the bottom of the barrel. Where are the areas that we can cut out waste? Where are the areas where we can ensure that our expenditure is proportional to our income for the level, the state at which we are in as a nation? Some of the things we do, even rich countries don't do those things. So we need to be very, very mature about this.
Right.
And get down to brass tacks and cut where we need to cut and cut our coat according to our size.
There was also the issue about road tolls. I don't know whether you would want to.
Yes. Well, the information is confusing. First of all, it said that they will be reinstated. And then in the same paragraph, it is said that they have not been reinstated and they won't be reinstated.
Right.
So one is left wondering now, which is which? If you say all new roads, do you mean that new roads built going where they have never gone before, or that even old roads which have been rehabilitated are now new and you reinstate the tolls? So it's a bit ambiguous. I think we need to come down very clearly and stop this issue of trying to score political points, on serious issues.
Okay.
It's either on or it is not on. They're either going to be paid or they're not going to be paid. We know that we can't afford a system of having free road tolls. We need to collect that revenue. If you're collecting e-levy, why aren't you collecting road tolls?
Good point. Good point.
And then the other issue is, if indeed the congestion at the road tolls is the problem, most people now have phones, smartphones, etc. Can't you get a digitized system where there's a swipe at the exit, at the entry of the toll gate, which will save time, eliminate people, and ensure that that money you pay doesn't go to waste. It is credited immediately. So if you make it clear that from now on, if you're going to use a motorway, you need to load up your phone and swipe it at the point, then you're saving time.
So there are ways
and you're also making sure that that money goes direct to join e-levy.
Okay, there are ways of going around this. The Daily Statesman, the only story I'll look at, Akufo-Addo endorses plea bargaining law. What it basically means is a process in criminal justice. It is a process in criminal justice where the accused relinquishes the right to go to full trial in exchange for some other benefit. But the final bit I want you to reflect on, Doc, we have about 30 seconds. Business Finder, Ghana targets $16 billion from tree crops as 5-year strategic plan is launched. I know you're passionate about farming. I just wanted you to quickly react to that. What do you see to be the future of this? Ghana targeting $16 billion from tree crops as this 5-year strategic plan is launched.
Well, I think, first of all, the planting of tree crops is a good idea. I think that the way it has been done in terms of prioritizing income over prioritizing the stop of desertification maybe needs to be reversed, because if you're planting a lot of trees in already forested areas, and I think 3/4 of the trees have been planted in already forested areas, mainly Eastern region, Western region, and Central and Ashanti region, that is not where you are getting the advance of the desert. Where you need to plant crops that will have a buffer effect on the entire country is from Brong-Ahafo going upwards, because then you will check the advance of the desertification, and also you will create another microclimate that will even protect the tree zones in the southern area. Now, I know why they've chosen the easier path, because of all this cattle roaming around in the savanna areas, destroying the trees that they have planted.
Right.
But there's a solution to that. You have to tag those animals, reduce their population relative to what the carrying capacity of the land is, and ensure that fodder crops are gathered at places where they can buy them.
Okay. Well, interesting point. Very interesting point on which you conclude the conversation, Doc. But thank you so much for joining the conversation, Dr. Abusa Kara Foster, who is with the National Interest Movement. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Well, this is where we sew it up on the News Review. Up next, sports. Do stay.